I noticed a bracelet with the initials M plus a forever on my wife's hand. What happened next is hard to remember. Life had been a whirlwind since the birth of our third child, Sophia. Melanie and I were exhausted but happy, or at least, I thought we were. Our home was loud, messy, and filled with love. I'd been proud to watch our family grow from just the two of us to a bustling household of 5. Sophia was barely a week old when I noticed the bracelet. It was during one of those quiet moments in the hospital room. The baby was sleeping in her crib, Melanie dozing off beside her. I was about to step out to grab a coffee when something sparkled from her wrist, a delicate, silver bracelet I'd never seen before. At first, I thought it was a gift from her mother, or maybe her sister. But as I stepped closer, I saw the charm dangling from the chain. It was a small silver heart, and engraved on it were the initials M plus A. I blinked, feeling a strange flutter of unease in my chest. Those weren't my initials. I sat down slowly, my mind racing. Melanie stirred in her sleep, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. The bracelet wasn't new. There was a slight tarnish on the clasp, and the charm looked worn, as if it had been handled often. M plus A. The logical part of my brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe it stood for Melanie and Andrew. But we'd never been the type for matching jewelry or engraved trinkets. The thought was out of character for her. Curiosity gnawed at me, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I tried to dismiss it, telling myself it was probably nothing. Still, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered that something was off. That evening, after we brought Sophia home, I couldn't shake the image of the bracelet from my thoughts. Melanie was glowing, cradling our newborn in her arms, her soft laughter filling the room as our older kids clamored to see their baby sister. I should have felt joy, but all I could focus on was that bracelet. Later, as she put the baby down to sleep, I casually asked, "That's a nice bracelet you're wearing. Where'd you get it?" Melanie froze for a split second. So brief I almost missed it, before smiling. "Oh, this? It was a gift." "A gift? From who?" Her smile tightened. "Just a friend." It felt like my world shifted on its axis. "A friend?" I repeated, my voice a touch too sharp. She glanced at me, her eyes searching my face. "Yeah, from work. You remember that promotion I got last year? A few of us exchanged gifts. It's no big deal." I nodded slowly, but her words rang hollow. Melanie was never one to wear jewelry from work friends. And why the initials? Why M plus A? I didn't press her further that night, but my mind was racing with questions. Who was this friend? And why did my wife, my Melanie, look like she was hiding something? The bracelet glinted in the moonlight, a silent reminder that the truth was just out of reach. The bracelet stayed on my mind like a splinter I couldn't dig out. Every time I saw it on Melanie's wrist, it whispered secrets I didn't know. M plus a forever. The more I thought about it, the less I could convince myself that I was being paranoid. A few days after I first noticed the bracelet, Melanie mentioned she needed to go grocery shopping. "I just need to get out for a bit," she said, grabbing her coat. "Want me to come?" I asked, testing her reaction. She shook her head. "Nah, I'll be quick. Stay with the kids." I stood by the window as she backed out of the driveway, the bracelet flashing in the sunlight as she waved goodbye. As soon as her car disappeared down the street, I made my way upstairs. I wasn't proud of what I was about to do, but the knot in my stomach told me there was something I needed to know. I went straight to her nightstand. The drawer was a mix of everyday items: chapstick, hair ties, a few receipts. Then I saw it, her phone charger. I glanced at the bed where her phone usually sat at night. Maybe. My heart started pounding as I spotted her phone on the dresser. She must have forgotten to take it. I grabbed it, my hands trembling as I pressed the lock screen. It asked for a passcode. For a second, I froze. But then I typed in the first thing that came to mind. Our wedding anniversary. It unlocked. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. I knew this was a line I couldn't uncross. But the need for answers was stronger than my guilt. I opened her messages. At first, it was nothing unusual. Conversations with her mom, her sister, co-workers. But then I saw a name that made my stomach twist into a knot. Adam. I tapped on the conversation. The most recent messages were short. Casual. Nothing alarming. But as I scrolled further back, the tone changed. My heart sank with every word. Adam, I can't stop thinking about you. Melanie, me too. It's hard pretending everything's fine. Adam, M plus a forever, right? Melanie, right? Forever. The air left my lungs. M plus A. The bracelet. The initials. It wasn't for Melanie plus Andrew. It was for Melanie plus Adam. I kept scrolling, feeling my world crumble. There were plans to meet, jokes I didn't understand, and then one message that chilled me to the bone. Adam, do you ever think about what it would be like if we just left everything behind? Melanie, every day. But we can't rush this. Just wait a little longer. Wait for what? My hands shook as I locked the phone and put it back where I found it. My mind spun with questions. How long had this been going on? Was it still happening? The front door opened downstairs. Andrew? I'm back. Melanie's voice called out. I wiped my hands on my jeans and took a deep breath. She can't know I saw. Not yet. Coming. I called back, forcing myself to sound normal. But inside, I was a man on the edge of a breakdown. One thought consumed me as I walked downstairs. I had to know the whole truth, no matter what it cost. I couldn't shake the images from Melanie's messages. Her words echoed in my mind every day. But we can't rush this. I sat at the dinner table that night, watching her feed Sophia, my thoughts swirling. Her laughter, her smile. It all felt foreign, like I was looking at a stranger. Jeremy and Lily, our older kids, were bickering over who got the last slice of pizza. Mom, he's cheating again. Lily whined, pointing at her brother. Melanie chuckled and shook her head. Jeremy, don't make me referee. She shot me a playful look. Typical sibling drama. I forced a smile, but inside I was a storm of emotions. Was this all just a performance? How long had she been pretending? Later that night, after we put the kids to bed, I sat with Melanie in the living room. She curled up on the couch, her legs tucked under her, scrolling through her phone. Anything exciting at work? I asked casually, testing the waters. She glanced up. Oh, same old. Deadlines, meetings. You know how it is. I nodded slowly. Deadlines, meetings, or Adam. As she returned her attention to her phone, my eyes drifted to her wrist. The bracelet. M plus a forever. The secret was right there in front of me, taunting me. I had to know more. When Melanie finally went to bed, I stayed up, pretending to finish some work. My laptop sat open in front of me, but I wasn't typing. I was waiting. At midnight, I quietly made my way to the bedroom. Melanie was sound asleep, her phone charging on the nightstand. My heart pounded as I picked it up, carefully unplugging it. I needed to see more. I opened the messaging app again and scrolled through her text with Adam. The messages stretched back months, more than a year. The deeper I dug, the clearer the picture became. This wasn't a fling. It was a second life. There were photos of them together, subtle at first. Selfies in a coffee shop, a quick snapshot of a sunset. But one photo made my blood run cold. It was a picture of Melanie in a hotel room mirror. She was wearing a sleek black dress, the one she always wore on work trips. Her hair was done up, her makeup flawless. But what stood out the most was the expression on her face. She was happy, genuinely happy, happier than I'd seen her in years. Beneath the photo, Adam had written, "Wish I could be there with you." Melanie replied, "Soon, very soon." I set the phone down, my hands shaking. The pieces were starting to fall into place. The late nights, the work trips, the sudden change in her mood. It all made sense now. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I needed proof, not just for me, but for what came next. Quietly, I grabbed my phone and snapped photos of her text with Adam. Every message, every photo. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it yet, but I knew I needed to document everything. As I placed her phone back on the nightstand, I caught sight of something else, a small leather-bound journal sticking out from under her pillow. My heart raced. Melanie never kept a journal. I glanced at her, making sure she was still asleep. Carefully, I pulled the journal out and opened it. The first few pages were lists, grocery lists, to-do lists, reminders for the kids' activities. But as I flipped further, the tone changed. One entry caught my eye. I can't keep lying. I hate what this is doing to me, to my family. But I love him. I love Adam. And I don't know how to walk away. My chest tightened, and I gripped the journal tighter. The next entry was even worse. Sophia looks so much like him. I wonder if Andrew notices. My knees buckled, and I sank to the floor. Sophia. I stared at the words, my mind spinning. I thought back to the day Sophia was born. The joy I'd felt, the pride, the love. Now, that moment felt like a lie. I closed the journal and placed it back under her pillow. I needed to get out of that room before I lost control. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe. Sophia looks like him. Was she his? Was Adam her father? The thought made me sick. But deep down, I already knew the answer. I had to get a DNA test, and I had to do it soon. The next morning, I woke up exhausted. I barely slept after what I'd read in Melanie's journal. Every time I closed my eyes, her words echoed in my mind. Sophia looks so much like him. I had to get answers. After breakfast, I took Sophia with me to run some errands. Melanie didn't ask questions. She seemed relieved to have a quiet house for a while. I stopped by the pharmacy and bought an at-home paternity test. The clerk gave me a polite smile, but I felt like the words, "Is she really yours?" were written all over my face. When I got home, I locked myself in the bathroom and took a sample from Sophia, then from myself. My hands shook as I sealed the test kit and prepared it for shipping. It would take a few days to get the results. A few days of pretending everything was normal. But then, something unexpected happened. That evening, Melanie's phone rang while she was in the shower. I glanced at the screen. The caller ID read Mom. I picked it up and called out, "Melanie, your mom's calling. Can you answer it?" She called back. "Tell her I'll call her later." I hesitated. It felt wrong to pick up her phone after what I'd done the night before. But it was her mother, so I swiped to answer. "Hello?" There was silence on the other end for a moment. Then a familiar voice, hesitant. "Melanie?" It wasn't her mom. It was Adam. I froze. My heart pounded in my chest. "No," I said, my voice steady but cold. "It's Andrew." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Then Adam spoke, his tone cautious. I wasn't expecting that." "No, I bet you weren't." Silence hung between us, heavy and uncomfortable. I could hear the faint sound of water running from the shower upstairs. I couldn't hold it in any longer. "How long has this been going on?" Adam sighed. "Andrew, I don't think." "How long?" Another pause. Then he said softly, "Almost 2 years." 2 years. My mind raced back to everything that had happened in those 2 years. The late nights, the work trips, the birth of our daughter. "Sophia, is she yours?" I asked, my voice trembling. Adam hesitated. "What?" "You heard me. Is Sophia yours?" There was a long silence before he finally answered. "I don't know," he admitted. "Melanie said she wasn't sure." I clenched my jaw, anger and heartbreak mixing inside me. "Do you love her?" Adam sighed. "I didn't mean for this to happen. We didn't plan it. But yeah, I love her. And she loves me." At that moment, the bathroom door upstairs creaked open. Melanie was done with her shower. I couldn't talk to Adam anymore. "Don't call her again," I said quietly. "This is over." And with that, I hung up. Melanie came downstairs, her hair wrapped in a towel. She smiled when she saw me. "Everything okay?" "Who was on the phone?" For a moment, I just stared at her. The woman I thought I knew. The woman who had been lying to me for years. "It was your mom," I lied. "Oh, I'll call her back." She leaned in to kiss my cheek, but I stepped back, avoiding her touch. Melanie frowned. "Are you okay?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." But inside, I was anything but okay. I wasn't just waiting for a DNA test anymore. I was waiting for the moment when I'd finally confront Melanie with everything I knew. And I wasn't sure if I wanted answers or closure. 2 days after my call with Adam, a knock at the front door startled me. Melanie was upstairs putting Sophia down for a nap, so I answered it. Standing on the porch was a man I'd never seen before. Mid-40s, balding, with a rough demeanor. He glanced at me, his expression guarded. Is Adam here? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. What? I asked, stunned. He shifted uncomfortably. I'm looking for Adam Reeves. I heard he might be staying around here. Adam's last name. I filed it away in my mind. No one by that name lives here, I said, keeping my voice even. How do you know him? The man frowned. Let's just say he owes me. If you see him, tell him Craig's looking for him. He handed me a card with his name and number. Then, without another word, he turned and walked back to his car. I stood in the doorway for a moment, staring at the card. My thoughts raced. Who was this guy? And why was he looking for Adam? I went inside, closing the door behind me. My hands were shaking again. This is my chance. I had no intention of calling Craig. Instead, I reached out to someone else, an old friend from college, Mark, who worked in private security. We hadn't spoken in years, but when he answered, his voice was warm. Andrew, long time no talk. How's life? Could be better, I admitted. Listen, I need a favor. I need someone to have a conversation with a guy named Adam Reeves. Just make sure he understands to stay away from my wife. Mark's tone shifted, becoming serious. Everything okay? No, I said quietly, but I'll figure it out. I just need this handled. Mark didn't ask any more questions. Consider it done. When I hung up, a strange calm washed over me. I wasn't proud of what I'd just done, but I didn't regret it. 2 days later, I noticed a change in Melanie. She was distracted, her phone glued to her hand. She kept stepping outside to make calls, her voice tense. One night, as I was putting the kids to bed, I heard her in the backyard, pacing. Please call me back, she whispered. I don't know what's going on. I'm scared. I closed the kids' bedroom door and stood there, listening. I didn't need to guess who she was calling. Adam wasn't answering. The next morning, Melanie barely touched her breakfast. Her hands trembled as she stirred her coffee, her mind clearly elsewhere. Everything okay? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. She glanced up, startled. Yeah, just tired. I let the silence stretch, watching her carefully. She was unraveling, and I could see it. That evening, after the kids were asleep, I decided it was time to talk. I found Melanie sitting on the couch, staring at her phone. I sat down beside her. Melanie, can we talk? She looked up, her eyes wary. Of course. I kept my voice calm at first. You've seemed distant lately. Is everything okay? She hesitated. I've just been overwhelmed. With Sophia and work and everything. I nodded slowly. I understand. But I feel like there's more going on. Her eyes darted to her phone, and that's when I knew she was on edge. Who have you been calling? I asked gently. Her eyes widened. What? I've seen you, Melanie. You've been calling someone over and over. Who is it? She shook her head. No one. Just my mom. I leaned in, my voice lowering. Don't lie to me. I'm not, she said, her voice rising. Suddenly, I slammed my hand on the coffee table, making her jump. The anger I'd been holding and boiled over. Stop lying. Tears welled up in her eyes. Andrew, please. Who is he, Melanie? Who's Adam? Her face went pale, and for a moment, I thought she might faint. I leaned back, my voice softening again. I know everything. The bracelet, the messages, the hotel stays. Sophia. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. I didn't move. I couldn't comfort her. Not anymore. You need to tell me the truth, I said quietly, because if you don't, I'm done. Her shoulders shook as she cried. When she finally looked up, her face was streaked with tears. I was going to end it, she whispered. I swear. I was going to tell him it was over. But you didn't, I said, my voice hollow. And now it's too late. Melanie sat there, trembling. Her tear-streaked face twisted with guilt. I could barely look at her. Talk, I said, my voice cold. Tell me everything. She shook her head, covering her face with her hands. I don't know where to start. How about the beginning? I said sharply. How long have you been lying to me? How long have you been in love with someone else? Melanie flinched, her sobs catching in her throat. It wasn't supposed to happen, she whispered. It started after my promotion. We worked on a project together. At first, it was just friendly. But then you decided to ruin our marriage, I interrupted, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. It wasn't like that, she said quickly. I was lost, Andrew. You were always busy with work, with the kids. I felt invisible. Adam noticed me. I clenched my fists, anger boiling in my chest. Don't you dare blame this on me. I'm not blaming you, she cried. I'm just trying to explain how I felt. How you felt. I snapped. Did you ever stop to think how I would feel? How the kids would feel? Or did none of that matter to you while you were sneaking around with him? Melanie wiped her tears, trying to compose herself. It wasn't like that. It wasn't just about, you know. She avoided the word, but we both knew what she meant. It was emotional, too. He made me feel alive again. I stood, pacing the room. Alive? You've been living a lie. That's not being alive. That's being selfish. Silence hung between us, thick and suffocating. I stopped pacing and turned to face her. And Sophia? Is she his? Melanie's eyes filled with fresh tears. I don't know. The words hit me harder than I expected, even though I already knew it was a possibility. You don't know? I repeated, my voice low and dangerous. You're telling me you had an affair for 2 years, got pregnant, and you don't even know if your baby is mine? She broke down completely, sobbing uncontrollably. I'm sorry. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. When I found out I was pregnant, I wanted to believe she was yours. I told myself it didn't matter. But it does matter, I said coldly. It matters more than anything. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The only sound was her sobbing, broken by the occasional gasp for air. Finally, I sat back down across from her. Adam's gone, I said quietly. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide. What? I took care of it, I said, leaning back. He won't be calling you again. He won't be waiting for you at hotels. He won't be in your life, ever again. Fear flickered across her face. What do you mean you took care of it? I leaned in, my voice soft but firm. Let's just say, I made it very clear to him that he's done with you. Melanie's lip trembled. Andrew, what did you do? I held her gaze. I protected my family. She started shaking her head. You didn't hurt him, did you? I stayed silent, letting her mind fill in the blanks. The truth was, I hadn't touched Adam, but Mark's guys had made sure he got the message loud and clear. He's scared, I said, my voice steady. He won't come near you again. Melanie pressed her hands to her mouth, her eyes wide with fear and shock. I can't believe you. What did you think would happen? I interrupted. You thought you could cheat on me, lie to me, and I'd just roll over and let you walk away with him? No, she cried. I wasn't going to leave you. I swear. I stood again, my anger bubbling back to the surface. You already left me, Melanie. You left me the moment you let him into your life. Silence fell again, broken only by her quiet sobs. I'm filing for divorce, I said, my voice cold and final. Melanie gasped. No. Please, Andrew, we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can. No. I cut her off. It's too late for that. Her tears fell harder. What about the kids? What about Sophia? I swallowed the lump in my throat. I'll take care of the kids. And once I get that DNA test back, we'll figure out what happens with Sophia. Melanie buried her face in her hands again. Please, she whispered. Don't do this. I stared at her, feeling a strange mix of anger, sadness, and relief. You did this, I said softly. Now you have to live with it. The days after our confrontation felt like living in a house of ghosts. Melanie stayed, but we barely spoke. The kids noticed the tension, asking why Mommy and Daddy were acting weird. I did my best to reassure them, but inside, I was crumbling. The DNA test results came in 3 days later. I opened the envelope in my car, parked in a lot where no one could see me. My hands shook as I pulled out the paper and scanned the results. Probability of paternity, 0%. Sophia wasn't mine. I sat there, staring at the words, my mind blank. I'd prepared myself for this possibility, but seeing it in black and white was like having the air sucked out of my lungs. I thought of the night Sophia was born, how I held her tiny hand and whispered that I'd always protect her. And now, I wasn't even her father. The tears came suddenly, overwhelming me. I punched the steering wheel, letting out a guttural scream that echoed in the empty car. Years of love, trust, and commitment, all destroyed by one ugly truth. But the tears weren't just for Sophia. They were for the life I thought I had, for the woman I thought I knew, for the family that was slipping through my fingers. When I finally calmed down, I wiped my face and drove home. That evening, after the kids were in bed, I found Melanie sitting at the kitchen table. She looked exhausted, her face pale and drawn. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady. She nodded, her eyes wary. "Okay." I sat across from her, placing the DNA results on the table between us. "Sophia isn't mine." Melanie's face crumpled, and she let out a sob. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know. I wanted to believe she was yours." "Wanted to believe," I repeated bitterly. "You wanted to lie to yourself. To me. To everyone." She reached across the table, her hand trembling. "Andrew, please." I pulled my hand back. "Don't." Her tears fell harder. "What happens now?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "I've already spoken to my lawyer. I'm filing for divorce." "No," she whispered. "Please, the kids." "I'll fight for custody," I said. "I'm their father. I've been there for them every day. I won't let you drag them into this mess." "What about Sophia?" she asked, her voice barely audible. I hesitated. I'd been wrestling with that question since I opened the test results. Sophia wasn't mine by blood, but I was the only father she'd ever known. Could I just walk away? "I don't know," I admitted. "She's innocent in all this, but I need time to figure out what I can handle." Melanie nodded, wiping her tears. "I never wanted it to end like this." "It didn't have to," I said quietly. "You made choices, and those choices destroyed everything." Silence hung between us, heavy and suffocating. Finally, Melanie broke it. "I never stopped loving you, Andrew." I looked at her, searching for any trace of the woman I once loved. "Maybe you did," I said, "but not in a way that mattered. Not in a way that kept us safe." She buried her face in her hands, sobbing again. I stood up, unable to bear it any longer. "I'll stay until we sort out the custody arrangements. But it's over." Melanie didn't respond. The next morning, I packed a bag and left. I moved into a small apartment nearby, close enough to see the kids regularly. I focused on my work, on keeping busy, on anything that would distract me from the pain. Melanie called often, but I rarely answered. She sent messages, apologies, pleas for forgiveness, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. Weeks passed, and life settled into a new routine. The kids adjusted to the changes, though they still asked why Mommy and Daddy weren't together anymore. I gave them the only answer I could. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, I told them. And sometimes those mistakes change things forever. Sophia's laughter echoed in my mind at night, her tiny hands reaching for me. I loved her. That much hadn't changed. One evening, Melanie dropped the kids off at my apartment. As she handed me Sophia, our eyes met. There was no anger between us anymore, just sadness. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know," I said softly. As she walked away, I held Sophia close, breathing in her familiar scent. Blood or not, she was my daughter, and I wasn't going to abandon her. I kissed her forehead. "I'll always be here for you, baby girl." And with those words, I made my choice. The pain would fade, the anger would dull, but my love for my children, for all of them, would remain. Because that's what it meant to be a father.